There have been movies like Raman Raghav and I don't know, or maybe Raman Raghav is not, it's just something I thought of right now, where they do or Ted Bundy, for instance, and it is known as exhibitionistic disorder. So so let's start with subjective. Feels good to be back, doesn't it? What's up, you guys? Aditi, welcome back to our channel. It feels so odd to sit and talk to a camera and teach again. I just feel exhilarated and nervous at the same time. Let's get back to our regular schedule. Just a little change in time. Instead of 7 p.m. I'm trying 5 p.m. I'm just trying to like match with my viewers, like when my viewers are on YouTube and when it would be convenient for them to watch. If you have a particular time slot that would be convenient for you, like especially when we're studying, if you would like to watch my videos, what that time would be like, what time would be suitable for you, you can tell me in the comment section. I will definitely take into consideration because it's our channel and not just my channel. Okay, so we're going to talk about abnormal behavior. I'm just coming back with abnormal psychology because in a few of my, like in one of my vlog wale video, I was told that they would want abnormal psychology video because it really helped them. So I thought that I'll start with this one. It's like an introductory one. I did make a video like this one earlier, like maybe a year or year and a half ago. This video, आज का video is just an extension of that one. उसमें मैंने सिर्फ 4 points बताए होंगे. Today we're going to do like 8 to 9 points, I think. So let's begin real quickly. You know how we tend to say that इसका behavior बहुत abnormal है, ये बहुत सोता रहता है, इसको depression होगा. No, she has a habit of not checking the door whether it's locked or not. इसको OCD होगा. ये है ना, ये हवा में बातें करता है, किससे बातें करता है ऐसे, तो इसको schizophrenia होगा. But how do you actually decide if a behavior is normal or abnormal? How do you define a behavior as abnormal and normal? पहले तो there is no black and white way of thinking about this. There is no one behavior that can be said as कि अच्छा ये abnormal ही है, because we need to take two things into consideration. One is our own judgment, our own social judgment, and second is the culture that we live in. So basically, it's the society that we live in, and that it decides whether a behavior is considered as normal or abnormal. This is like the shortest way I can explain how we can define a behavior as abnormal or normal, but we're gonna go more in depth now. There are some indicators of abnormality and normality, so let's start with that. पानी चाहिए पानी. So there are like 7 indicators of abnormal behavior or abnormality. I will give the timestamps of all of these 7 in the description box. So if you want to jump to any of the indicators, when you're watching any of my videos for like quick revision, it will be very helpful and very quick. Time save हो जाएगा आपका, because if you already know what subjective distress is, you know all of that, but you don't know what is social discomfort. I don't want you to watch my whole video to find out where it is, and it's very time consuming. And exam में जब जल्दी revision करना होता है, this is the best way you can do with our channel. So I'm going to give the timestamps in the description box. You can go and check that out. So let's start with subjective distress. Subjective distress is like any kind of discomfort that you may feel, any kind of physical or psychological pain that you may feel. So this is one example that I thought of when I was studying this chapter in semester 5. Is if there is a solo traveler, okay, and he likes to travel alone and he bikes everywhere. So he decides to use his bicycle to actually go around 100 countries. Now, somebody who is like you and me, who is not into biking, who is not into sports, is not athletic or anything, we would think it's crazy. Like, how can you bike everywhere? How painful that would be, because सब जगह you're like cycling. Imagine by cycling from Kolaba to, I don't know, Malad or Nerar or Seafoods or something. It's insane. Just imagine this person is going to bike from India to, I don't know, Egypt, for instance. Somebody would think it's crazy, somebody would think it's really abnormal behavior, but is it actually abnormal? Is there subjective distress? And if you ask this person may actually feel proud of his achievement instead of any kind of distress. So we cannot call this behavior as abnormal. It's eccentric, yes, but not exactly abnormal. If we consider behaviors when it comes to like mental disorders, like somebody who has depression, who is diagnosed with depression, they may have subjective distress, but even somebody who has anxiety disorders, even they go through so much of distress because of that anxious and worrisome behavior over and over again. Even somebody who has OCD, they also feel distress because they have to do the same thing over and over again. They have obsessions and they have compulsions. But if you think about somebody who has bipolar disorder, one or two, and they are in a manic episode, they are not actually feeling subjective distress in a way. They are actually feeling very elated. Their mood is amazing. They at times would not even want to take their medications because they are feeling so great. So, is that subjective distress? So, subjective distress is an element of abnormality, but it is not a sufficient condition, nor is it a necessary condition to consider something as abnormal. Let's come to the second indicator, which is maladaptiveness. Now, maladaptiveness means that it's a kind of a behavior that kind of interferes with our well-being, with our ability to do daily tasks, our ability to go to work, to take care of ourself, our physical hygiene, our mental hygiene, all of that. Also our relationships. So all of that comes in maladaptive behavior. So we can take an example of somebody who has anorexia. Um, that is maladaptive behavior, where they're not eating their food properly, they're not taking their calories, their nutrients, vitamins in, and they look very skinny, bony. Whereas somebody who has depression, they have an inability to go to work, they have inability to maintain a social life, their relationships. So that both of these are maladaptive behaviors. But then what about somebody who is grieving? Somebody who lost one of their loved ones, maybe their spouse, their child, their parent, a friend, even, and they are grieving, they would show symptoms that are very similar to depression. So, would that be considered as maladaptive behavior? If you have noticed, I am, at least in the first and the second point, I am like leaving you with a question at the end, kind of. It's because I'm making you think about, oh, is this considered as abnormal behavior or not? But I will also answer this question. So, like for example, when it comes to grief, it is maladaptive behavior because they just don't stop taking care of themselves. They sleep a lot, they don't eat enough, they cry a lot, they cannot even go to work, they cannot maintain their relationships, they cannot function like a normal person would, and that is maladaptive behavior, but it is not considered abnormal. Okay. Because when it comes to depression, we are going to get into different kinds of depressive episodes and stuff, but generally they could be episodic, but they are generally for a long period of time because it comes back. Even if it's episodic, it does come back. But when it comes to grief, it doesn't exactly come back. I mean, you may miss the person, but your behavior changes as you get acclimatized to it, as you accept the fact that the person is no more and all of that. So that maladaptive behavior does stop after a point in time. Hence, it's not abnormal. Coming to the third point, which is statistical deviancy. Now, this is again quite tricky because we're going to look at the stats, we're going to look at everyone's behavior. Let's first start with defining abnormal. Abnormal means abnormal, away from normality, away from normal. So anything that is considered away from normal, means rare, statistically rare behavior, should be considered as abnormal behavior, right? Straight, black and white. But it's not. It's not like that. Let's say someone has intellectual disability like low IQ, is statistically rare and it is undesirable, and hence it is labeled as abnormal behavior. But let's say something as cold, like common cold, it's not rare, but it is undesirable, yet it is not considered as abnormal behavior. But when someone does not have an intellectual disability, it's the opposite of that. Being somebody who's a genius, like Kim Namjoon, who has an IQ of 148, it is statistically rare, but it is desirable, and hence it is not considered as abnormal behavior. Can you see how our judgment comes into play here? Because something is desirable, we would want someone who is genius because they will be good at their work, they everything, like if they're in business, they're any line, any field of work, they would be amazing. You would love to be with someone who is smart and charismatic, and hence is considered as desirable, and hence is not considered as abnormal behavior at all. It's not an abnormality. But somebody who has intellectual disability, just like ageism, that is something that is also considered undesirable because they are not contributing anything to the society, they are not able to contribute, that's what the society thinks. And also our judgment is based upon how the society functions, and hence it's considered as desirable, and hence it's considered as abnormal behavior. A few other things that should be considered as abnormal behavior in my opinion, but it's not, is honor killing. Okay, honor killing is undesirable. It is not statistically rare, it is quite common, and I'm not going to take names of states or where it happens because, well, I just want to be politically safe. But it is not considered as abnormal behavior. Okay, so if you remember, I gave two reasons to decide, or how we decide whether a behavior is abnormal or normal, right? So one was judgment, which I already spoke about, is statistical deviancy, and is maladaptiveness and subjective distress. Second was culture, that I said. So culture mein we would say that there are laws, there are written laws, this sabko pata hai, and then there are the social norms as well, which actually decide what is acceptable or what kind of behavior is acceptable in a society and what is not. So let's say in any country, in India, holding hands is kind of acceptable in a mall, let's say, but doing the same thing in front of a family member of one of the partners is not kind of considered okay. Or having sex in public, definitely considered a violation of a social norm. So when we keep on repeating the same thing, we keep on violating a particular social norm or multiple social norms, then that behavior is definitely considered as abnormal behavior. Like somebody um, who shows their private parts in public repeatedly, like it is, you obviously know that something like this is not acceptable in our Indian culture, or I think anywhere, but let's just talk about India for now. So when somebody keeps on repeatedly showing or flashing their private parts to strangers in public, it is considered as abnormal behavior, and it is actually a disorder, mental disorder according to DSM. It is known as exhibitionistic disorder. There is going to be an ad that's going to play after this video clip, and all I want, or I'm going to ask you to do is let the ad play. Just don't skip the ad, because that's how I get paid from YouTube, and I already get paid like peanuts from YouTube. So the least you could do is just like let the ad play. I also have the super chat, super thanks thing that I have started on our channel. Niche you can see some dollar ka sign or kuch to money ka sign. If you click on it, you can actually like super thank me by giving me like 20 rupees to 50 rupees, even like lowest amount. If that is a lot for you being a school student or a college student, so just let the next ad, like the ad that's going to come, just let it play, don't skip it. I'm going to thank you in advance, and I'm utterly grateful for being a part of our community and watching my videos. What I'm going to say next is not exactly social norm, but it's just a part of culture. You know how in Navratri we say कि माता आती है अंदर. Um, that is not considered abnormal behavior at all in India because of the culture that we have. But if something like that happens in US or UK or anywhere in the Western countries, that would be considered as abnormal behavior, definitely. And this is the reason why it is so important to have a therapist, or to go to a therapist who is from the same cultural background as a client or as a patient, because it will be easier for them to understand the client or the patient. Like if somebody who is Indian, who's from an Indian origin, and unke family mein mata aati or something like that, and they live in the US, and they go to a therapist who is an American who know nothing about Navratri, they would find this a schizophrenia or any other disorder. So yeah, just a side note. We are halfway done with the indicators. The next is social discomfort. Now, the easiest way to explain this is that somebody else's behavior makes you feel weird and awkward and very uncomfortable. Then that behavior would be considered as abnormal behavior. Not always, you have to look at the other indicators, but just saying that could be considered as abnormal behavior in a way. I love the textbook examples. I'm just going to use that here with a few other examples that I can think of over the top of my head. So they have given an example that you are in a bus. It's quite empty, like बहुत seats खाली है. A passenger gets in, they get a ticket also, and they have a choice to sit wherever they want because the bus is almost empty with just 3-4 people here and there, but they actually decide to sit next to you. Now that could make you feel uncomfortable कि तो मेरे भी बाजू में क्यों बैठा है. Like you can sit ahead of me when there is no one there, you can sit like adjacent to me when there's no one there, or there are other people उनके बाजू में बैठ सकता है, but why are you sitting next to me when you're a stranger, I don't know you at all. And that kind of can make you feel uncomfortable, although is he doing anything wrong? I mean, it's not illegal to sit next to a person. There is a seat, there are two seats, you know, for a reason. उसने ticket भी ली है, so that is again this, but it still, it does make you uncomfortable. But if the person knows you and still they don't come and sit next to you, then even that makes you feel uncomfortable and makes you question things. So is this supposed to be considered as abnormal behavior or not? So social discomfort is another indicator and element that can decide whether a behavior is abnormal or not normal, but it does depend on circumstances. Like if you take the example of the person flashing you his private parts, for instance, if the person is a stranger and you don't know them at all and they just flash, it is making you feel uncomfortable. It's also illegal, it's a criminal offense in IPC to flash their private parts to the opposite gender, etc., which I don't want to get into, but yes, that's a thing. But let's say if that person is your husband or something, and if they do it, or it's your boyfriend, and you kind of like it also, but it still makes you a little uncomfortable because it's happening in public. So would that be considered abnormal behavior or not? Second last point, irrationality and unpredictability. When somebody is behaving irrationally and if somebody's behavior is unpredictable, that could be an indicator of abnormal behavior. There could be people who are unpredictable in their ways, you know, they may wake up at 8 o'clock in the morning and maybe tomorrow they wake up at 11. You have no clue. But would that be considered abnormal behavior? Maybe, maybe not. Again, you have to look at the circumstances. Uh, let's talk about the manic episodes of someone who has bipolar disorder. They speak very quickly. They have not a disorganized speech, they have disorganized thought. So they jump from one topic to another, and it's very difficult to catch up with what they are saying. That is kind of irrational behavior and also unpredictable in its own way. Somebody who has schizophrenia, they have disorganized speech. So again, what they are saying is very incoherent. So we're not actually understanding what they are saying. That is again quite unpredictable and irrational. Let's take the first example I spoke about, the solo cyclist traveler, 100 countries, if you remember. So somebody who goes on a bike to 100 countries. that would be considered as irrational behavior in a way. It's eccentric, not abnormal, but kind of irrational for people like you and me who are not into those kinds of stuff. We would like to take a normal plane or something, maybe. But is that abnormal behavior? So when it comes to irrationality and unpredictability, for instance, the most important factor is our own evaluation of whether a person can control his or her behavior or not. So the Greek example that I was speaking about in maladaptiveness, if somebody just starts crying very बहुत फूट फूट के रोना, I don't know what it's called in English, all of a sudden, you know, would you consider that abnormal behavior, or it's just somebody who is sad? uh, so yeah, let me know what you think about these questions that I'm asking you, by the way, in the comment section. I would love to know and it will also help me understand if you're understanding what I'm explaining. Water break. You also get some water break. Last point is dangerousness. When someone is a danger to themselves and or to others, it would be considered as an indicator of abnormality. But again, not all. Now there are some mental disorders in psychopathology that do have suicide or homicide, especially suicide, as a symptom, but again, not all. But again, you can't rely on this one indicator as solely as a result or as a reason for abnormality. Let's take a few mental disorders. Like somebody who has depression, they may have suicidal thoughts, suicidal ideation, even attempts. Somebody who has BPD, borderline personality disorder, they may threaten themselves to their partner that they will kill themselves if they leave them. So these behaviors would be considered as abnormal and or also kind of like a symptom of a particular mental disorder. But let's say someone who is in the army, who wants to join the army, who is studying and जी जान लगा देते हैं to join the army, are they abnormal? Like, is their behavior abnormal? To that they want to join the army, they are going to be on the border and stuff like that. Like, would that be considered abnormal behavior? Somebody who is driving recklessly, will that be considered as abnormal behavior? Somebody who is into adventure sports like bungee jumping, scuba diving, rock climbing, will that be considered, will that person be considered as mentally ill? Will that behavior be considered as abnormal behavior? We all have heard about antisocial personality disorder, and there have been movies like Raman Raghav and Ted Bundy, for instance, who do commit crimes like kill people, rape women, rape men, even boys, even. But not everyone who commits heinous crimes like these have a mental disorder. So again, like all the other indicators, any indicator cannot be the sole indicator or the sole reason somebody's behavior can be considered as abnormal behavior. That is it for today's video. I hope you learned stuff. I hope this helped you revise the indicators of normal behavior. And yeah, don't forget to like, share this video, subscribe to our channel, and I will see you next Friday with another psychology video.